Let's talk about the neuroscience of the dog-human bond. How do our brains change in response to our interaction with dogs? I'm Dr. Raj, and I'm a medical doctor and co-owner of Summerfield Service Dogs. At Summerfield Service Dogs, we breed and train specialty service dogs. Did you know that our interactions with dogs can result in changes in chemical mediator release, our stress response, and our emotional regulation? We see dogs' heart rates and behavior change in response to owners' stress levels, but we also see hormonal shifts occur in dogs based on their interaction with their owner. In one study, 10 female owners and male dog pairs were included. They tested blood cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and oxytocin, which is considered the love hormone and plays a big role in emotional bonding. They tested those levels over a 60-minute period and tested them at 7 different time points. They also recorded interactions and noted the type of touch, whether it was a pat versus a scratch, or a scratch and pat combined, and that was the touch that the owner was giving their dog during this interaction. Further, researchers noted how frequently the owners touched their dog. They also looked at the dog's position during these interactions and the time the dog spent in each position. What the researchers found was that owners with low oxytocin levels before and during the interaction touched their dogs more often. They also found that dogs with lower oxytocin received more touch from their owners. And in this case, the authors go on to make a suggestion that the owners and dogs, when they had lower oxytocin levels, they were actually seeking that oxytocin bonding power from those interactions. So they were initiating more physical contact to try and boost those levels. They also found that the more frequently activating touch was applied by the owner, the higher the dog's cortisol levels became. However, they didn't note that there were any other signs of stress, like position changes by the dog. And they suggested that that might have been for different reasons rather than direct stress. They saw that the higher the owner's maximum oxytocin level, the fewer position changes the dogs made, and the shorter time they spent sitting. Whereas when the owners had higher basal cortisol levels, the dogs actually spent more time standing. And the suggestion that was sort of a stress response reaction, that the dog was picking up on their owner's cortisol levels and responding in that way. This study revealed that our levels of oxytocin and cortisol can actually affect how we interact with our dog. Not only that, but in this study, if an owner had high cortisol, it seemed to stress the dog, and they responded by being in a position like standing more often. The study also revealed the two-way relationship an owner can have with their dog, and also revealed that we seek oxytocin boosting interactions with our dogs. And actually, our dogs seek that same interaction and the resultant oxytocin increase from us. The next study looked at females with PTSD, and these were all veterans. They either were exposed to a service dog training program, or they watched dog training video content as a control group. There were 13 female vets in the service dog training program and 15 female vets in the dog training video content control group. And the study authors looked at some interesting outcomes. One was something called telomere length. And that's just a cell marker that tells people about an individual's cell aging. And essentially, it's looking for how this impacts their cell aging. Another thing they looked at was heart rate variability. And that's a metric that when that's lower, it actually suggests that the person is more stressed. And then finally, the participants reported their PTSD symptom severity, their perceived stress, and their anxiety. For the intervention, they had participants participate either by working in the service dog training program or watching videos for 1 hour a week, and they did this for 8 weeks. And then they made comparisons between the groups and also compared their baseline numbers to their numbers after the intervention. What they found was that the telomere length, which is that marker of cell aging, actually increased, and the heart rate variability decreased in the service dog training program compared to the control group. So in other words, the people who were in the service dog training program had a longer telomere length, and that would suggest that their cell aging decreased. Both groups reported equal decreases in PTSD symptom severity, as well as their reported stress and anxiety levels. This study illustrates the impact working in person with a service dog can have on people. Specifically, the telomere length increased, suggesting that less cell aging was there compared to the video control group. However, both groups had improvements in the PTSD symptoms and anxiety and stress. Finally, the heart rate variability worsened in the experimental group, and the authors weren't clear on why that would be the case. I think some important things to draw from it are that both groups had improvements in some of their symptoms, but the cell aging improved in the group that directly worked with dogs. This study suggests our relationship with dogs can actually improve our cellular aging. Keep in mind, this was just from working with a dog 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. It was a short amount of exposure, and it makes me wonder what the impact would be if this kind of data was taken but over a longer period of time. The last paper we're going to talk about involved focus groups of 7 vets who all had a diagnosis of PTSD and were paired with a psychiatric service dog. The authors reported several themes that had to do with their pairing with their psychiatric service dog. Specifically, vets reported that the dogs helped them to feel safe. They helped them to manage the symptoms and impact of their post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They also reported that they had improved sleep quality, improved emotional regulation, reduced anxiety, enhanced anger management, and a reduction in the misuse of alcohol and prescription medications, as well as reduced suicidal ideation. So not only did they feel safer, but they actually saw improvements in the symptoms of their illness, PTSD. They actually were able to sleep better and had better control over how they reacted to things. And they misused drugs and alcohol less often. And finally, their thoughts of suicide decreased. That's pretty impactful and pretty incredible. The results are clear here. This was a study of a high-risk group, and these patients who have PTSD commonly struggle with things like anger and medication and alcohol misuse. And the fact that service dogs were, at least in this smaller group, shown to be really helpful in all of those outcomes is really an amazing thing.